Welcome to another broadcast of YOUnique, Life Starring You on the Artist First Radio Network. All past shows are archived. You can pick them up at artistfirst.com. And now here she is. It's the lovely Susan Stackpole.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here on YOUnique, Life Starring You. We are what we are because of you, and we thank you so much for your support. We have an amazing guest here with us today, and I'll share more about her in just a second. We have a special project we do here at YOUnique called Pay It Forward, and scientific studies actually show our internal environment affects the external energy around us. And so they found that deep breaths, loving thoughts, even the briefest meditation and prayers just can change your internal energy and affect the world around you. So we just ask that you take a few moments with us here today, just take a few deep breaths. Even the briefest meditation, just send some loving thoughts, and just even the tiniest prayer makes such a massive difference, and we appreciate you doing that for me. Our lovely guest today is Courtney Amundson, and Courtney is just awesome. She, at a very early age, discovered she is a spiritual seeker, and at 16, she began experiencing tremendous spiritual awareness and having divine teaching completely and lovingly flow through her. The wisdom she received was originally for herself, and she was, after a short time, guided authoring a book sharing the enlightening insights she received. Courtney, in addition to advancing her teachings, is actively progressing to Qigong healing certification. She's completing Spring Forest Qigong levels 1 through 4 and craniosacral therapy level 1 at the F. Institute, and her education is ongoing. She is also a classically trained violinist, a kirtan performer, a singer-songwriter, and so much more. She is on multiple instruments and voices in a new, more free-flowing expression engaging her musical passion. And her book, Teaching from God, continues giving Courtney the divine guidance and tools in creating an exciting life, and more than anything, she desires inspiring all of us to do the same. So please, for more information, visit Courtney's website, and it's www.teaching, plural, from God, TEACHINGSFROMGOD.com. And please join me in giving a wonderful welcome to lovely Courtney with us today. Welcome to the program, Courtney.
Thank you, Susan. I'm really excited to be back on again. This is our third show together, which is so exciting. So I'm really honored to be here.
Amazing. It's amazing. We just delve into deeper and new topics, and and so it's always so exciting. And so thank you for your generosity in being with us and sharing what I can only describe as your radiance with us. We're just very blessed having you here with us. So thank you so very much.
Well, it's my pleasure.
So for anyone who's just joining us, Courtney, we certainly would share with them, and they can find on our webpage the previous interviews that you've done, where you really go into depth in terms of your journey and how you began channeling and things like that. Maybe you could just give us a quick couple-minute succinct version for anyone who may just be joining us, so that they have some context in terms of, do you remember being 3 years old and all of a sudden like you're getting messages, or how did you come to have the awareness that you do and then begin channeling, and then maybe share for people who don't know what channeling is, just please share with us what that is for you.
Yeah, I'd love to. It feels like lifetimes ago, and at the same time it feels like yesterday. Because in the way that I say that is, I think a lot of people talk about their spiritual awakening as one day I woke up and I felt absolutely completely different, and my life was changed on that day. And for me, it wasn't exactly that. There was a day, March 12th, 2012, when I had, I would say, a heightened experience, but I kind of describe myself, and I'm sure my parents would describe me the same way, as, somebody that was very sensitive my whole life, and very aware of things my whole life, maybe just in a more understated way. But, my mom was a pivotal point, because she was interested in a lot of spiritual things. You know, we had books all around the house all the time. We had spiritual cinema movies. We had, and that's how I got involved with a lot of things. And I listened to Abraham Hicks material, and so I was already, you know, aware of channeling and lots of spiritual sort of discussions from a younger age. So that's why I say it was a natural progression for me, because when I started channeling myself, it was just sort of like, oh, okay, this is my natural self. This is who I really am and how I'm supposed to be helping the world and helping myself in this life. So in the way that this came to me, I believe, is because I was asking my whole life how I can be of service. And I didn't truly realize that until I was 16 on that day, you know, March 12, 2012. But up until that point, unconsciously or subconsciously, I should say, I was asking that question: what can I do? How can I be of service? And I didn't want to be ordinary. I wanted to be something unique for myself, which ties right into your show name. So,
we love uniqueness.
But you know, I think that's how I describe it now. Is it wasn't a moment where I realized, oh my gosh, there's some amazing gift that I have that no one else has. No, it was sort of you know, the day that I realized, wow, this is what we all can tap into if we allow it. So channeling to me is tapping into our highest awareness and expression as human beings, to understand that we're beyond this body, we're beyond this mind, we're beyond this lifetime, in fact. And to consistently and constantly be asking, you know, these deeper questions, and knowing that we don't have all of the answers, that's what allows the deeper information to come to you. So your connection to the universe, to your higher self, your divine, is through your asking. So that's how it started for me, and that's my work now to this day, is helping other people to find that as well, because we all have this connection. So it's not unique to myself. It's just, you know, I guess interesting to people that it did happen for me at age 16. So that's my sort of condensed version. But yeah, for sure, there's a lot more information, the specifics of that day and years prior in my book, Teachings from God. So yes.
Absolutely. It's an awesome book. I would just say, for me personally, where a lot of people say, it would be great if we had an instruction manual for life. I feel very much, not only the book, but you've been doing beyond that in terms of, you offer a lot of channeling through your website and your YouTube channel and Facebook and things like that. And so I would also recommend people visit you there, because you address very contemporary events, both in the world and personally, which is really awesome. And one of the things you shared that really is so beautiful, and also I think so many people both desire it and to some degree feel uncomfortable with the idea of, well, what happens if, and it's the idea of authenticity, and especially as it's tied to purpose. I think for so many people who feel that they don't know who they are, they don't know what are their true gifts or what is their true calling in the world, and so as a result they feel like that they just need to make do with the life that they have now because they have obligations and responsibilities. And so maybe you could share with us, Courtney, especially for people who maybe didn't have the environment you had growing up where they were exposed to all these wonderful spiritual teachings, how they can begin exploring their authenticity And the same way that your question was answered about wanting to know your calling and how do you serve, how can we ask that same question and more authentically connect with ourselves and with others?
That's a great question, a perfect question. And I think I ask myself that question every day. And the reason why I do is I realize that we're constantly evolving, we're constantly expanding, we're constantly growing every single day. And so if we ever get to a place where we're comfortable where we're at and we have no more questions, then I think we've lost the point of life. So I think, my life personally definitely has not been an easy ride for me, just because I've accessed, some opening in my life. A lot of people assume that means that once that is open, once that gateway is open, that you're just kind of gliding and, enjoying a free-form life. It isn't that way. A lot of people come to me, a lot of my clients, they're coming to me because they want to live more authentically. They want to live more free without the constraints of the ideas of their family or of, beliefs about money and fear. And I think a lot of people, they choose the safe way because they haven't been taught how to rely on unseen forces to help you. We're taught that magic isn't real. We're taught that that's fiction, when in reality, I think it is a force in our world that is trying to keep us down, trying to keep us from looking outside of our minds and discovering the magic that is actually what we're made to live here on Earth. So that's my ever-growing, constant teaching is, when I wake up and I think about what I want to do and I think about the limiting beliefs that I still have about myself and what I can do, I'm constantly looking back to my own personal practice and what am I doing on a day-to-day basis to state my purpose. So I think the number one thing that each of us can do is have a practice in your life where you are continuously growing this connection with your inner being, with your inner guide, or you could say the universe, or you could say your God, or your master. That force within you that brings you closer to yourself. We have to all have a practice to go there, to go deeper within. And once we have that relationship built, there is trust there. Just like when you're building a friendship, after 10 years of being friends with someone, there's a deep trust there. There's a confidence, that you share with each other. So it's the same with spirituality, with going deeper within yourself, is you have to give yourself that time to build that relationship. And once you do that, you can confide in that deeper place of knowing. And that's when you realize that force is there with you all of the time. It doesn't turn on and off just because when we're in meditation then we realize it. No, it's always there. So it's our job actually to clear out the clutter so that we can rely more solidly on that. And that force brings us into that clear place of mind where we can, bring all of our pieces back to ourselves live out our soul purpose, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, a lot of people, they come to me and ask me, well, what's my soul purpose? And my job isn't to tell you what your soul purpose is. I don't know. But it is part of my duty to help people guide themselves into that process of finding themselves. So that's what I'm doing. I don't see it as a beginning and ending. I see it as every day is a new day, you know, in that sort of circle of becoming.
I like that very much, the circle of becoming, which is really a beautiful image. And as you were sharing all of that so powerfully, Courtney, one of the things that came to mind, I think, where a lot of people, I know even in my own journey, things that come up, so we have this desire in more authentically and more fully connecting with God, with others, with ourselves, to always not necessarily in that same order. And especially, you know, we tend to seek that, I think, more these days when things are not going well, with this idea of, oh, I have to figure out kind of where things are no longer on the rails and get them on so that I can feel good and feel life is positive. And like you said, that there's this idea, I think, when we're on that path, that the heavens just open up and it's always sunshine and rain flows and flowers and all these great things. And one of the things I think that comes up for all of us in this idea of self, right? There's so many things, like self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-forgiveness, self-confidence, self-love, and all these things where I think for most people that they find that the most challenging. And so as a result, there's this almost anxiety about staying present long enough and having the self-acceptance, I think, would be the big term in all of this, to say, oh, okay, over here I didn't make the choice that, looking back now, would have been a healthy choice. Or I'm in the moment right now and I said, oh, I have these goals of having a healthy, fit lifestyle, and all of a sudden there's chocolate cake, or whatever it is. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about how we can find a place of stillness when we are when we are exploring ourselves, when we are exploring the divine, when we happen across something that just feels so uncomfortable, that we really dislike, that we feel like, oh, maybe I'm not going to be able to change this about myself. How can we more fully surrender and enter self-acceptance, self-forgiveness, and self-love? I guess that would be the question.
Well, I got this topic in my back pocket every day, and I know all about this, and it only comes from your own experience, right? Like this teaching can only be answered through your own personal experience, I believe. And for myself, I think the only way to get to that point is of self-love, complete self-love. And first of all, I think it is kind of a roller coaster. I don't think it's, making a goal each day to be more self-loving, and then one day you wake up and you just see no flaws, you see nothing more to grow on. Because again, I think self-love is, on the outside, it looks perfect, when on the inside, I think it's really a mask for forgiveness. I think forgiveness is really what we're looking for, because forgiveness is understanding that each moment you're changing, each moment you're growing, each moment, flows into a new moment, and your feelings change, your emotions change, just like that. We don't curse Mother Nature for moving from one season to the next. Some people do. I really enjoy the seasons. But, sometimes going from fall to winter, people get really anxiety-ridden. And I think to myself, well, they must have a hard time accepting themselves for moving from one emotion to the next from day to day, because I think this is just nature, moving, and we have to forgive ourselves for that, because it's bound to happen. We can't stop that. If you're dealing with depression, if you're dealing with anxiety, if you're dealing with jealousy or anger or resentment or whatever it is, we have to forgive ourselves, number one, for where we are right now. And that is the hardest part, because I think when people make a goal within themselves to be self-loving, it's this unattainable, like, I'm just going to one day wake up and everything's going to be perfect. I don't think that's a reasonable goal to have. I think a reasonable goal is waking up in the morning and being able to say to yourself, I appreciate you for your hard work. I appreciate you for being open-minded. I appreciate you for leaving the house and going on a walk. It doesn't have to be like, I have to get this job or else. Or I have to, whatever, like people make up the most crazy stories about, what self-love is. And I honestly think it's forgiveness. And my teacher, Master Lin, Courtney Lin, he talks about if you can't forgive yourself, or if you can't love yourself, or you can't forgive someone else, or you can't love someone else, then pretend. Because if you can sort of fake it till you make it, it really does work. And it works in every situation. And the goal of all of this is to open our hearts more. When we open our hearts, our energy is more open, our life is more open, healing can come to you easily. The goal, the reason that you want to forgive others, you want to forgive yourself, is not to prove anything. It's because you want to be healthier, you want to be happier, you want to feel more whole. So I think don't make it about anyone else. Make it about yourself. And if you're struggling with anxiety, you wake up and you're anxiety-ridden that day, you tell yourself, I forgive you for this moment. I'm supporting you in this flow, in this moment. And it has nothing to do with your worth. It has nothing to do with how loving or unloving you are. It's a moment. So, and I understand this very well for myself. Sometimes this happens. My teaching is, okay, this is a moment, and this moment's going to flow to another moment, and that's going to flow to another moment. So it doesn't really define you. It's moving through you. I think the goal, or what we're trying to move towards, is being unattached to the movement and how it's flowing through you. In the meantime, you do things that make you feel good. And I think it's not simple, but it's simpler than a lot of us make it to be. And I would just suggest not making a calendar, where you put stars on when you have a good or bad day, because that's reversing, like, that is more damaging, I think, than just saying I'm going to go with the flow with each day.
I really thought
if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, what a very powerful exploration, and also direction in terms of how we can start just being in a place of feeling more comfortable. And I think for a lot of us, there's this idea, well, if or when I achieve such and such, or when I do such and such, then I will be worthy of my own affection and own love, right? I think for a lot of people, especially the idea of relationship, whether it's family or a work relationship or a romantic relationship or whatever. It's funny because I think we give ourselves permission sometimes in those relationships to feel things, to be a certain way, to have more self-love and self-acceptance that we do not necessarily give ourselves on our own for whatever reason. It's like that relationship or that opportunity signifies some idea of worth, and with that it's like, oh, okay, well now I feel like I'm enough and so I can love myself. So what you were saying about this idea of really recognizing that it's a journey and having a more easygoing approach in terms of the acceptance and the awareness and being in the moment and knowing that it's okay. And one of the things, too, that also came to mind is this idea in a social media-oriented culture. Everyone, of course, and it's human nature, right, is putting their best self forward, or this version of their best self, and not necessarily telling what's going on behind the scenes. And sometimes we don't always remember that we're in this together, meaning that everybody has something going on that probably if we knew, we would have more empathy, we would have more compassion, and we would view them differently. And the same thing with ourselves. I think sometimes we don't give ourselves permission to say, wow, I really am going through a challenging time, and it's amazing just that I got out of bed and I was able to function today. And I think if we did more of that, what you were saying about this idea of letting life flow would come more naturally. I like the example you gave about nature, right? That nature just is, whether it's the trees or the flowers or whatever. That you don't. I mean, maybe if we could hear them speak in our language, we would hear it. But I don't think so. That they don't. A tree doesn't sit and say, oh, I wish I were a chrysanthemum, right? It just is busy being the best oak tree or whatever it can be. So there's a lot of wisdom in what you shared about this idea of just going with the flow.
Mhm. And it's sometimes it's not easy, and sometimes you do have a thought that is, I wish I weren't the way that I am. And even in that moment that you're hearing yourself thinking that thought or even saying it out loud, you can stop yourself and realize that you're thinking that and still say, okay, as long as you're noticing, then you're free in a sense. Because these thoughts still do come up, no matter how enlightened you are. Thoughts still do come, and it's just our attachment to the thoughts. Now when they come up for me, I can be in that emotion, I can be in that feeling, but there's a bigger part of me that doesn't believe it's true. So with practice, it doesn't mean that the thoughts don't come up, but you recognize that it's a pattern, you recognize that pattern or that thought is triggered by that pattern in motion, and then you can sort of just let the moment pass. But it's very important to be gentle with yourself. Self-love is not in other words, I guess what I was trying to say before is self-love is not sustainable 24 hours a day, every single day for the rest of your life, once you become enlightened, so to speak. I think self-love is being able to approach any situation and let it be part of your reality, whether it looks positive or negative. Because I think, we were talking about challenging times. Both you and I know what that's like. And I think one of those challenging times for most people is when they've had, their first major loss in their life, someone in their family, crosses over. And that's usually, I've noticed with so many people, that's usually where this turning point is, where they start asking a deeper question, where they start looking at themselves and realizing there's more to my experience. Like, there's more emotions than I knew that I had. There's more knowledge than I knew that I had. And it's like an experience that makes you reach into your inner world and really pull out all of your resources. And I think that, that's an experience where you really have to train yourself to be self-loving of that moment, those challenging times. So it's an ever-expanding subject, right?
Right, absolutely. What you shared, though, is just so excellent in terms of giving us, I guess, like an entry point, right? Because I think that there is this idea that self-love is something that once you've achieved it, like you said, that there's this idea that it's just always and ever sustainable, which is not realistic. And it's an ever ongoing thing because we're growing and expanding. And so the same thing with being self-loving. And one of the things you had shared with me, Courtney, that's really fascinating, and we just really welcome you sharing more, is this idea that sometimes, and please correct me if this I'm not properly expressing this idea that sometimes in our physical body we can be carrying a certain energy that we don't even realize is maybe the result of the way something emotionally has processed or an event and the way we're carrying it in our body, and that it can actually manifest itself in our external environment. And by taking a look at some of these things and physically clearing some of the things in our body, it also starts to shape our external world. Could you share a little bit more about that and how we can have more awareness in terms of what our physical body is and our emotional and spiritual bodies are communicating with us?
Yeah, well, this can definitely happen in my own practice. I'll say, when I work with people one-on-one, a lot of people will come to me and say, I've had aching hips, I have extreme pain in my hips, or I have knee pain that won't go away, or I have migraines every day. What is the answer? What do I need to see? I think number one, what comes through about these physical issues is it's all emotional. It all stems from emotional. But number one is we have to be asking the question. So if a person is stuck in their anger and blame about a situation, say, I don't want to pick something too extreme, but we'll put it in the context of children. So there's 3 children playing outside on the playground, and one of them steals one of the toys from the other child. And the child goes into, not into anger, but goes into fear and smallness instead of standing up to the kid that stole the toy from him. Never confronts the other child. Then grows up, doesn't remember this incident, grows up into an adult, and when he approaches his first job and gets fired from his job, again, for no good reason, he goes into smallness and blame into himself for being too stupid or whatever it is. So So this person doesn't realize that they've been, ever since this incident when they were a small kid, has been replaying itself in their whole life until it really matters. You know, when they're fired from a job for no good reason, they go back into this pattern of smallness, and then they develop energy blockages in their liver, for example, because there's anger in there, but they won't acknowledge it because they're not asking the question of what's the patterns that I've been replaying in my life, and why is it there, and what can I do about it? So that's why I was talking in the beginning about building that relationship with your divine, with your inner guide, because when you start asking those questions, then more comes up to the surface for you to look at. So this person, might come to me and say, I've been fired from my job, and I need to find a new job. So then, in the channeling, in that context of working with that person's soul, all of those things would come forth and show them, well, when you were a child, you had this experience, and you suppressed your anger, and so you went into anxiety, you went into fear, you went into smallness, and believed you weren't good enough. And then what does that do? If you do not look at it, then you've got, a blockage in your liver, anger. Anger and the liver go together. Or anxiety and the kidneys go together. So how do we heal that? Well, we work on the opposite. We work on joy. We work on forgiveness. We work on all of those different things, and that helps heal the physical body. So, in the context of working with someone one-on-one, we, first of all, look at those fundamental belief systems that have been not looked at for so many years, and then we change the story, and then we talk to the cells, we talk to the body. Once the body hears you, and you're co-creating with your own body, with your own spirit, then everything is much more free-flowing. So I think the awareness, asking your body, asking yourself the right questions every day. What can I do to be more aware? What can I do to help myself heal my anger? Pretend if you have to. I pretend that I forgive you. I pretend that I love you. I pretend until it turns into I forgive you, I love you, I forgive you, I love you. For real. So that's just an example of what I see a lot is it's usually something that's been going on for quite some time. And then, once that's come to the surface, it's really, really easy to deal with. It can be cleared almost immediately. And the physical condition can finally, be worked on. That's the easy part. It's really the emotional component that is what takes a little bit more time. So, yeah, with my knowledge of Qigong as well, knowing what emotions deal with what organs is helpful, so that you can help that person physically.
Absolutely. I feel there's so much empowerment in what you're saying, and I feel sometimes for people, I think we live in a culture where people are socially taught at a young age this idea of being a victim instead of being victorious, and that when it's handed back to them to say, okay, it's unfortunate that this happened. For instance, the example that you gave about the child, right? There's the child displaying, not misbehaving, not doing anything, and all of a sudden, now because of someone else, they no longer have their to live. And it's a tough thing understanding how do we process that going into adulthood, especially if a similar pattern continues repeating itself. And it sounds like in what you're saying, too, that there's a certain degree of patience. And I really like what you said, too, about just as silly as it may feel, I think probably the first couple times for a lot of people is this idea of just asking our bodies, asking our spirits, asking our heart, what is it that I can give you that would help you process this and help you feel better and help you be light and help you be loved. And there's something really empowering and really beautiful about that, Courtney.
Well, it does take patience. And for me, you know, noticing that I myself have had these patterns and traumas, everybody does. It's just your willingness to look at it. And the way that I see it is I would rather look at it fully and completely right now than, you know, when I have the time to, rather than 30 years from now when it becomes a completely different story and a much more intricate story, you know, coded by all the people and things that I think it's about, when it's really not at all about that. You don't want to have to sift through all of that. You know, you want to keep your closet clean. You want to, you know, it's just like, you know, what my mom used to tell me is, you know, if you fold your clothes every day, then you don't have to work for 2 hours in your room to clean your room. If you just fold your clothes at the end of the day and put them in your dresser, then you're good to go. You don't have so much work to do every day. So it's the same. It's the same thing.
Oh, that's such a powerful metaphor for us, I think, right? And sometimes I think that there's this, I don't know if it's human nature or we have this idea sometimes that it can't possibly be easy and it can't possibly be simple. And if we have that belief, then we tend to create that environment, right? Exactly what your mom was saying about you just fold your clothes every day and put them away and tidy up just bits at a time. Then it's an ongoing process versus waiting for 2 weeks or whatever, and then, oh gosh, like now you're taking your entire Saturday afternoon to clean your room. And I think that there's something in our culture, I think especially in certain cultures, that this idea of this massive effort towards something and just scaling the mountain and all of that sort of thing, that there's something about that sometimes I think that if it's not that, people almost don't know how to process. And wait a second, I did the work on myself and now this is flowing and things are happening more easily or whatever. And so I feel that you're offering us with so much insight in terms of taking a pause and reassessing how are we addressing ourselves, how are we living life, is that serving us, and is that the way that we would like to continue having these same experiences? And one of the things, Courtney, I feel where you really walk the talk is, and maybe you could share just for you what has helped in circumstances like this, walking the talk in terms of this idea of accepting what is, even if it doesn't feel great in the moment, right? That, you know, maybe, I don't know, a friend was having a party and you were hoping that you would be invited and then you weren't. That's a really stressed example, but something like that. And staying in that moment and processing those emotions. Or if the kind of alternate is true, where you're in a situation, maybe it's a work environment or something, and it's circumstances for the moment beyond your control, where you're in a dynamic having to deal with someone who doesn't really, who isn't very respectful in the way that they treat people, including you. And sometimes you have to set boundaries to say, no, I can't do that, and it's upsetting for them. So this idea of acceptance and people pleasing, you know, the acceptance of the reality of what is, and then how do we, if we tend to be a people pleaser by nature, how do we merge those two things and find our, find our moral ground, find our, where at the end of the day, we can say, I've been authentic, I've been kind with other people, I've been respectful, and even if they're unhappy, or even if this circumstance is not feeling very good right now, I have peace.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I think for me, the journey, when I started my own sort of spiritual quest, I felt really lonely, and I think that was part of my fear of kind of going full throttle with it, is just that I was going to have to let a lot of people go in my life that I knew weren't really fulfilling me. Connections are one thing, but meaningful, soul-filling kind of connections is another. And I knew that that's what I wanted and deserved. And so I think first and foremost, you have to know what you want, know what you deserve, and claim that, first of all. Knowing that there's going to be some people that don't agree with you. There's going to be some people that go up against you. There's going to be interactions that are beyond your control, like you say, at work or at a party or a family gathering, where you're not going to be on the same wavelength as somebody, and that's okay. But if you are wholeheartedly in approval and cheering for yourself, then it makes it a whole lot easier. Then secondly, once you're in that state for you and you're solid in that place, then you start attracting those kinds of people around you as well. And for me, once I just had a couple of those people in my circle, it was like, oh, yes, this is exactly what I was looking for. The kind of people that allow you the space to be completely you, allow you the space to process whatever you're processing and love you more for that. Those are the kind of people that you deserve to be around. So that doesn't mean that I haven't had to set boundaries. It doesn't mean that I haven't had difficult situations, because I have. But I think what has changed for me is my ability to no longer have insecurity about the way that I feel about something. If I know something is really not serving me, I'm not waffling about it anymore. I'm not asking 10 different people what they think about the situation, because I am secure within myself enough to know if I don't feel good about this, then I don't feel good about this. I'm going to stand up for myself. And, you don't need to make other people feel bad as they're making you feel bad. You don't have to be mean to anyone in the process. It's just about saying, listen, I appreciate you for talking to me about this, or I appreciate you for inviting me to your party, or or not. Whatever the situation is, it's sort of like, once you've stood up for yourself, then it's a lot easier to say, to draw a boundary with somebody and say, this really doesn't feel good to me, and I'm going to excuse myself from this opportunity. I've had to do this a few times recently, where I realized, I could think less of myself and think I'm not going to get anything better than this. Or I could choose the more empowering thought, which is, I know that I deserve this. I know that I deserve a magical, fulfilling life. And if this doesn't feel like that, then bye-bye. There's a lot of people that aren't accustomed to thinking in that empowering mindset. So that's like the number one thing that I'm helping people through all of the time, is changing from victimhood to empowerment, and just, really visualizing bigger into what they know that they want. So I think that's underneath all of what you were just saying is, that we don't always allow ourselves to really get that we know that we want, because we think it's too out there. So yeah, the drawing boundaries, that is necessary from time to time, but I think also once you got your tribe around you, that's supportive as well. And but that doesn't come until you are your own tribe to begin with. You have to do that for yourself.
That's so empowering what you said about, and it makes so much sense in terms of, right, if you create your own tribe within yourself, and it's going to manifest on the outside. And with everything you were just saying about this idea of, we go out into the, I mean, as human beings, it's really fascinating because we come into this world with the ability to give ourselves so many things, right? We can give ourselves acceptance. We can give ourselves forgiveness. We can give ourselves love, right? The same way that we give it and share it with other people. And it's amazing how, on a regular basis, the same conditions we put on ourselves, we wouldn't necessarily put on our best friends or our family or our beloved or whatever. And so it's really fascinating that it's simply the idea of giving ourselves permission, of letting ourselves say, okay, I'm going to be more gentle today. I'm going to be more accepting. I'm going to set what I know are healthier boundaries for me and for other people. And so it's just taking responsibility for the way that our life is showing up, and exactly what you said about this idea that giving ourselves permission that these ideals, these dreams that we're having for our life are possible. Because I think sometimes what happens is, going back to the example you gave with the child, right, is if people have the same experience enough times, they begin to believe that it's not possible for it to be any other way, right? And especially if they have this energy and things going on that they don't even realize, and the same things keep showing up, and they've read the books, and they've gone to counseling, and they've done all these things, that they can get to a point and say, well, why bother? Why should I attempt one more thing? Why should I apply one more spiritual principle? Mm-hmm. And so what you're saying, Courtney, is very empowering in terms of understanding and helping us have an idea of the inner workings in terms of how does the energetic and how does the mental and how does the psychological and how does the spiritual all connect in terms of making up the people that we are, and what can we do in nurturing ourselves and creating the lives that we desire, right? Because there's so much beyond us that we, on a daily basis, we just do not control. And when you think about what it is that we do control in terms of having instant access, right? Like right now, any of us could ask the questions that you've asked in terms of how do I have, deeper self-awareness, and what is my heart asking for me to do and be today, and what is my mind asking for me, and what would nourish my body. And so these are all just so amazingly empowering, and I appreciate so much you sharing that. And maybe one of the things you could touch on really quickly as we're wrapping up is, in all the channeling that you've done, especially for your book, is there any one especially really profound truth that has come to mind for you, or something that really got your attention, not as you were channeling, obviously after you finished and went and read it back and just was like, wow, that's the secret of life, maybe, or maybe not that dramatic, but along those lines?
Well, I think this will seem really simple, but I think this actually was the most profound seed, I think, that was embedded in me with this journey. And it relates to your last question as well. And it's the whole notion, I know we've talked about it before on here, but the whole notion that we're our own knight in shining armor. Mm-hmm. And it relates to your last question, because what is the most dominant voice within you? You can ask yourself this. What is the most dominant voice within you? Is it your parents? Is it your siblings? Is it one of your extended family members? What is the most dominant voice in you? What is controlling you? And for me, in order to be free, to feel free, I wanted to know for sure that the dominant voice within me was of the highest vibration, of the highest unconditional love that was possible. And knowing that you could switch that on just with your own consciousness, just by saying yes, that's like the biggest secret ever, ever kept, I think. And I think what blew my mind is that it's available to all of us. And again, it's simple, but it's also really profound, because I think so many people, when this journey began for me, and everybody's asking me, you know, when did this start for you, and how did it happen, and what an amazing gift, and all of that. And you know, I will admit, you know, it's really easy to eat that up, you know, especially, you know, 2 years ago. I can remember how different it was for me. And now, from this point in my evolution, and working with more people, I can say that I'm much more humbled by the whole thing, and I see how powerful everyone is, and I see how normal it really is if you give people the chance. So, yeah, you know, I would say that it's really amazing to see that teaching come to life in people of all ages, all backgrounds, all, you know, spiritual, awakened or not awakened, however you want to put it, you know, people that don't really have any clue what's about to happen, you know, in a channeling session, in a soul reading, and they're given this opportunity, like, to see themselves as their own knight in shining armor, and it's like the best thing in the world, you know. So I think that, because it is your freedom ticket. You can be given as many jewels as you want. You can be given, you know, riches. You can be given lots and lots of friends. You can be given lots of land, but none of it is going to free you. What is going to free you is if you know that you're the answer to everything.
Oh my gosh. So I mean, what can we say beyond that? That's so, like you said, profound and simple. And I just would invite everyone to check out your book, Teachings from God, and to visit your website, www.teachingsfromgod.com. Is there anything in particular you have coming up, Courtney, or anything, especially in terms of the one-on-one sessions or anything like that you'd like people to know?
I would just invite everyone to, I guess, follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and YouTube, I guess, because that's where I'm most active, and I give updates on there of what's going on. So that'd be the best way to stay in touch.
Excellent. And then, as we officially conclude, is there any, maybe, I know you do so many beautiful musical meditations and things like that. Is there any particular specific meditation that you like, or even for you, a particular piece of wisdom, or how you were saying this idea of tapping into the highest voice possible? Is there anything, especially for you, on a daily basis that you make a practice of saying to yourself or chanting to yourself?
Well, I think I'll have to share my teacher, Master Lin's password. This is a password that I start off with every. I know you're going to have him on the show soon, but this is the password that we say before every meditation. So this is my daily mantra. I am in the universe. The universe is in my body. The universe and I combine together. That's the point which you sink into yourself. You realize your connectedness. You go into the emptiness, and you can start to co-create with your higher self. So I love that, because it really it's an affirmation. It's not a question, it's an affirmation, and I really love that.
Oh, spectacular. Thank you so much, Courtney, for sharing with us your beauty and your grace and your radiance and your talent and your wisdom. You just are so awesome. And the fact that you walk the talk and you lead by example, it's just such an honor having you here with us. And so thank you so much for just sharing with us your light and your love.
Well, you're the best host ever, and I'm honored that you were the first one that I ever had, first radio show, and you're the best. So thanks again for having me on, Susan.
Absolutely an honor and a pleasure, Courtney. Thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for joining us here on YOUnique, Lifestyle You. Remember, be kind, be true, be you.
You've been listening to YOUnique with Susan Stackpole on the Artists First Radio Network. All past shows are free to download. To do so, visit the YOUnique webpage at artistfirst.com. The views and opinions expressed on YOUnique are not necessarily those of the host, guest, or owners of Artists First Radio. Tune in again next week at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific for another broadcast of YOUnique with Susan Stackpole.